I'm here at the park. I went outside to check the mail and realized that it's a more gorgeous day than I realized. So, put on my bathing suit top and I'm at the park with the smoothie that I made. It's probably around 2 o'clock. I need to go back around 5 to make dinner before a Zoom call that I'm part of. So yeah, number one on my scale of importance is being outside in the sun. It was raining the last 2 days, so being inside was fine. And now it's sunny out and I'm outside. And being able to make my own food has shown me that I don't know if I want to make my own food. Like, there's the steps of buying the groceries and then putting them away and then remembering what to make in the morning and then making it, having the equipment out to make it, consuming it, cleaning up the dishes of the blender for the smoothie, and then this glass after I've finished the smoothie. All the time and the space that takes. It takes space for these objects, and it takes up space in consciousness. Like, I own this blender and I own that. And I find myself thinking, oh, how can I get rid of this compost? It really stinks and it's not compost day. Or there's fruit flies and just a couple. And, if I make the broccoli with Indian sauce, then there's this Indian sauce jar to get rid of. How do you get rid of that? They don't take it in recycling. So it's taking up a lot of my brain space and time. And I'm realizing how grateful I am now for these last 2 months of just going out and eating whatever. And now, since I realized that I'm also paying for the time and the space that they're occupying and the skills they're using in order to make it for me, kind of makes it worth the price. But then now that I realize that, I can try to design healthier food in there, because I thought it was only temporary, so I was just sort of eating whatever I wanted. And now that I realize, hey, maybe I want to do that more, then it would be good to find some healthier choices. I did get booster juice smoothies sometimes, but at Mucho Burrito I could get like a quinoa bowl or something without the burrito wrap, because wheat and rice, I think, since they're enriched with folic acid, they mess up folic acid metabolism. I learned from Dr. Mercola, I think it was, or somebody else, it's best to take optimized folate, or folate, not methylfolate, not folic acid. I've been taking methylfolate every day, even though it was something more to take during crisis, according to Dr. Peter Smith. But I think boosting methylators really does help me, especially when one considers that that's needed for epigenetics and stuff like that, genetic expression. Also, I'm taking 200 milligrams of SAMe a day, which he said to take 400 to 800 milligrams, or 8 to 600, 1600 on days that I feel really low. But I'm taking it daily. I think I like it. And for a while I've been saying I'm taking 125 milligrams of quetiapine, but I'm actually taking 67.5, because they're 25 milligram tablets, not 50. I don't know where my brain came up with that. but I've only been up as high as 67.5, and I think now I'm down to 50 again. So I'm down to a quarter of the Zopicone. Tonight I'm going to take less than a quarter, like a third. No, that's more than a quarter. Whatever, I don't know. I have like 4 smaller and smaller chunks, smaller than a quarter chunks, to taper down off of these next few days. And I'm still on 150 of trazodone, and I do think the CBD stuff is helping. I slept really well again last night. This looks really dark. Nature. Just what I needed. This takes precedence over talking to myself. I remember last year around this time, I was talking to myself a lot instead of being out in nature. Or maybe I was in nature talking to myself. I don't remember. But it's so rejuvenating. And I'm glad my brain's not like, well, I want to just talk to myself at home. I got a little bit of sun. Sunlight is a nutrient, activates vitamin D, which affects something ridiculous like, I want to say 30,000 genes or 3,000 genes. Must be 3,000 because I don't even think we have more than 30,000 genes according to science right now. But yeah, so I'm gonna get a bit more sun. Then I'm gonna go to Dollarama and get some black paint, because those papers that I was supposed to shred that I ended up kind of burning a bit because I think I was trying to systematize myself, like have the fire system come after me and be like, what did you do? And be like, oh my gosh. So I'm gonna try the whole black paint strategy because there's so much of it and it's all wet, and I don't know, I just feel weird about just throwing it out for some reason. I don't know. So I gotta fix that. Dumb mistake. Would have been way simpler to just pay to have it shredded. After the fact, I saw this storage place that said they have the shredding service, and I was like, no. So live and learn. And I feel like I'm starting to feel a bit anxious about all this stuff. After being out and about for so long, now I'm at home and I kind of don't like making food, and I've shared that. But the one thing I'm dealing with is the mess I made of those papers. And they're all soaking wet because I had to soak them because I lit them on fire, which was really stupid. Like, I think it was my ego trying to, you know, if it's not going to be calling for the mental health authorities anymore, it's trying to call for like the fire department or the police department or, you know, somebody in the neighborhood to notice, and then I get in trouble. And so anyway, these are the bags. And I'm sharing this because this week I'm trying to fix that dumbness that I did. It would have been easier to drop them off and pay, you know, 40, 50 bucks to get it shredded, or to get a shredder and shred things as I go. So now I'm wasting a lot of time and energy to try to fix this because I don't feel comfortable with just throwing it out. And the thing is that it's really soaking wet, so it's really heavy. And around here, they don't take the garbage bags or the garbage bins if it's too heavy. So I'm trying to dry it out a little bit outside, even it out, and then I got some black ink to put on it. I got 5 of those, and some glue, and some sparkles that I already had. And I figured I'd throw some turmeric on it, or curry powder, or whatever this is, because it's probably a bit old. Best before September 3rd, 2016. Yeah, it's a little old. So that will deter people from going through it. Probably not necessary, but you know, you just don't know, right? I think I've been collecting those papers for like 2 years, so I don't know what kind of information is in there, but it's all the sensitive documents. And I've had to put all my stuff in the recycle bag that can go. And I'm just realizing, well, I'm not just realizing, but I kind of want to share how things seem to expand. So I'm not used to this. Of course, I'm not going to leave it like this, but I'm just trying to share with myself all the things that are necessary, like this compost bag with the broccoli bits, and the spent yerba mate has to go in here when it dries out a bit. The kettle for boiling water, and my jugs of water, because I use the Alive water thing, which is on a tap in the laundry room. And those need to be filled. And then I need to figure out how to get rid of this glass from the Indian sauce, because can't put glass in the recycling, so I don't know where it goes. So if I wasn't making food for myself, I wouldn't have this trouble. And I had these Indian sauces left over from the island, so it wasn't like I bought them. And I would have bought something else. Like these can just go in the garbage, but I can't find those everywhere. So things that are more easily disposable. And then I have a couple cans of food left. Tonight, I'm going to do this with broccoli. Then I'll have to get rid of this. And I have another one in the fridge that I used last night. And then I have to get rid of this can, which can go in the recycling, obviously. And, you know, I'm making my overnight oats. And I put oats in the smoothie, too. So I gotta make the oats, put them in the fridge. I'm just making very plain ones. Before I would probably use chia seeds and all sorts of wonderful things like flax seeds. But I'm just doing oats and cinnamon. And then I put raisins in there to soak with it. But they tasted kind of gross. So now I put the raisins in the morning, so they're just nice. And then these I'm using half a pack in each smoothie because they make it taste nice with the French vanilla and add a little bit of nutrition. And this is for the smoothie, so I already had these. I already have this. I found this in the cupboard, protein powder, but it's kind of old. And then I bought these 3. Well, there was 3 of them. So I'm just trying to show myself and whoever how much effort goes into this. And this isn't my kitchen, so I've just left everything out so I remember remember what I need to clean up. And yeah, I'll take all this stuff away. But this is the pot, you know, you gotta cook the food, then you gotta clean the pot, then yeah, this is all obvious stuff people do to take care of themselves. But I'm feeling not only like exhausted by doing it, but also exhausted by noticing the sheer amount of things that are required, I should say, in order to do all this. So I bought a 6-pack of this coconut milk at Costco. And, you know, I have to remember to make this for tomorrow. So it takes up a lot of brain capacity is what I'm noticing. Knowing that I have to clean all this up in a few days. Remembering, before I was just eating Laura bars for breakfast, so there's no cleanup. So here there's a cleanup and silly cat. And I have my blender for smoothies, so I gotta remember to use up the blueberries that are frozen and the spinach. And that's how I'm using up more of the coconut milk. So it's pretty simple what I'm eating right now, but it still takes up a lot of time and a lot of processing for the brain. That's what I'm noticing. And you know, you have to remember to take the compost out and all the recycling of the tins, and so it's a lot to do for one person. And so this strategy works pretty well. Pretty happy with this. And look what I found. That is my bracelet from the psych ward, probably the last time I was in there. Can't really see the date. And now the goal of it is to get it dry enough that it's not so heavy that it can maybe go in one garbage bag and go in a garbage can here, and it won't be noticeable. I got my C and B3 face serum today, so I'm gonna try it out. So I haven't made as much video as I wanted, or I was hoping to. Doesn't really matter. Redomesticating myself has proven to take a lot of time. And just with all these chaotic things around, I feel like rearranging them and reorganizing them. So I'm seeing how having sort of this domestic environment, one can easily create a lot of busy work for oneself. And I'm not loving it, but I'll experiment with it for the week because that's what I said I would do. And I won't really be doing it much longer. I'm gonna make my broccoli dinner tonight, and then tomorrow I'm going for dinner with a group of friends, and then Thursday night somebody invited me out for their birthday dinner, and I was thinking of being like, no, I'll stay home and make dinner, but I was thinking, cool opportunity to not have to make dinner for myself, yay. And then Friday having dinner at work, and then Saturday I don't have the house to myself anymore, and it's a birthday dinner for somebody else. So I've got the next 4 days after this one planned out for meals. And I'll still do smoothies in the morning and oats, overnight oats in the morning. And then clean up this upstairs area and go back to the basement. And what else? I've been having a lot of insights and writing them down. I just haven't been talking about them as much because, oh yeah, last night I ended up sitting and watching Downton Abbey. I start to watch a little bit at dinner, and then I watch more and more, and I probably watched like 3 or 4 episodes last night. Oops. Yeah, it's kind of an addictive show for me. I just stare at it and watch. So I'm gonna not do that today because I do want to talk to myself tonight. And then I gotta finish up this whole destroying my stupidity of burnt, very semi-burnt documents that are soaking wet because I had to put out the fire, and then now I can't shred them. So they're covered in paint, and now they're trying to dry a little bit so they're not so heavy. Most areas have the automatic garbage trucks, but this one doesn't. So if the thing is too heavy, they'll leave it. So I probably have to go and put them in somewhere where it's automatic. Otherwise, it might sit there, and then somebody will be like, why did this not go? And then they'll open it up and see paper covered in black paint and burnt and glue, and I put a little vinegar in there so it would start to stink, and I'm gonna put sparkles and also glue, liquid glue. Sorry, environment. Next time I'll be a lot smarter about this. When I get back, I'll invest in a paper shredder. And I was just having an insight about something. I'm going to make food soon, but I wanted to talk to myself a little bit in order to get into it. When I was out yesterday, I was driving down a road that I've driven before, and it was interesting what words were catching my attention. And there was a restaurant, and the restaurant's name was Serendipity. So that's kind of a cool, high vibration word that I really like. And then I looked the other way, and there was this truck driving by, and I don't know how I noticed it at the last second. On the top part of the big rig above the window, it was a white big rig. It said spiritual, and I'm like, what? Why would it say that there? And it was called like spiritual transport or something. So I was realizing how these higher states of consciousness, or more positive states of consciousness, the brain, or the salience network in the brain, really picks out higher vibe words. Whereas if I was really down and felt suicidal, I'd probably be seeing the word death everywhere. But it's just more salient. And I have had that in the past. Before my first crisis, I remember I was going for a colon hydrotherapy. I like these self-serve colon hydrotherapy places, hydro spas for the butt. And the guy came in, and he put the TV on for me, and it was an episode of Family Guy, and it was like with the Grim Reaper and death, and I felt like I was dying, and that which was on the TV was mirroring that back to me. So perhaps we don't just have mirror neurons, but the whole universe responds to us as a mirror. So one might think, in order to see what state one is in, to feel on the inside, like, oh, am I in a good mood or bad mood? But I don't even have to think in terms of what the self is feeling, but I can see what my eyes are picking up on. What is being made salient? Is it positive words or negative words? Because so much of what we see isn't really separate from words. So if I have a repetitive thought process going on, if I'm really identified with that or listening to that, I'm not even looking at anything around me. So thoughts of the self, of self-consciousness, means I'm not seeing anything. I'm lost in the words that have nothing to do with the present moment. And then if I'm looking out at reality, and I notice beautiful flowers, I'm noticing beauty, and then I'm noticing beautiful words like serendipity on a restaurant or spiritual on a truck. So it's not only beauty of a flower, which is nameless, and you say flower, but that doesn't really encompass the beauty of the flower. So the word flower, I could say rose, and one might think of a rose. But what happens, I feel like, in some of these states of consciousness is, like the higher states, I don't like really higher or lower, but it's just an easy way to say it. What happens is one has a sense of beauty, for sure. So the sense of beauty is there, and whatever is made salient, if it's the beauty algorithm in the brain, it's often felt as beauty and seen as beauty too. And when we're feeling our thoughts all the time, our inner monologue, then we're not able to sense the beauty that's all around us. And in consensus consciousness, if we notice something beautiful, we might look at a rose and say, how beautiful. But I feel like when we're in something like a manic consciousness, we see a rose, and from perceiving the beauty directly and not through the thought that is beautiful, intellectually beautiful, when we really contact the beauty of it, it might give rise to a whole poem in our head. So I realized that it's like a poetic consciousness, and that it's possible that poetry is a sense, or we can sense things poetically when our senses are clear or when our senses are vibing high. So I might, when my senses are vibing high, I'll pick out serendipity and spiritual words when I'm out and about. And then if I look at a rose, it's not going to make a word out of it. It's going maybe to make a whole poem or a sentence, or it might create a simile or a metaphor. And so I feel that's partly why we're speaking in metaphors and similes and poetic ways when we're in mania, because if we look at something beautiful, it creates more words than, oh, that's beautiful intellectually. We can actually sense the beauty of it, and the beauty of it creates the words within. So we can be creative. There's creative words. So poets might do that by looking at a rose and creating a poem about a rose. But a person who's in mania can look at anything and a whole poem will come out. And part of the reason why it can be called, quote, word salad is that we're looking one way and another, and the poem that was created in consciousness by looking at one flower isn't finished by the time we look at something else and creates a poem about a nice bar stool or something. So there's more words. What I'm trying to say is that we look at a flower, usually it's flower. One word, one thing. But when we look at a flower in manic consciousness or magic consciousness, more words are created through that direct perception of it. We're not perceiving it directly when we say beautiful flower. We're perceiving it conceptually. Our conception of it goes out to meet the flower before the whole flower can speak to us. So, words are a part of our senses in a way that even if we had no thought and we were sort of deconditioned from projecting onto something, like projecting a single word to summarize something, as opposed to allowing it to speak to us, we would still speak words. So I remember having a little quote on my counter that said something about, you're really silent when you're silent, even when you're speaking, or something like that. I don't know. So when you're silent, you can still speak, but the words come from direct perception of an object, direct perception of what somebody is saying. And so words are a part of the senses. Sensing will create words. But if we're sensing through thought, then we're not creating words. Like, words are using us. It's hard to make this distinction, but if somebody understands a little bit about Eckhart Tolle, they might understand a bit where all these words come from. And then I realized by listening to John Harold and also Steve Pavlina, totally two different people with two different subject matter, but John Harold mentioned a process worker saying, be a little psychotic every day. And then I can't remember what Steve said, but he talks about subjective reality and interpreting things in a subjective way, which is making your own meaning out of something. So for me, I realized a little bit what I'm doing is making metaphors daily. So when I went into map consciousness or magic consciousness or manic consciousness the first time, my brain was making metaphors all the time. And with our senses, we can sense similes and metaphors and poetry in our daily life with what we're seeing, and we can't believe how beautiful it is. We're trying to put that beauty into words. We're trying to put how we see how patterns relate and interconnect, and everything's interconnected and one, and we're trying to put that into words. How do you put that into words? If one has the real perception that everything is one, we're looking from a space that everything is one. So everything we look at, we can see the oneness of it. We can see the interconnection. And then we could speak about the oneness and interconnection of any little bit of reality. And with that type of brain state, we could talk a lot, because we could talk about almost anything. We can look at something and it speaks to us and through us. And when I was writing this thing about poetic consciousness down. I think what I've been doing with myself for 2 years is making some metaphors and similes daily, like so-called mania is like this, like. Like is the key word in metaphors. It's kind of like this, it's sort of like that. And also the word like, when you think about it, it's a big word nowadays with all those liking on Facebook and stuff. And a while ago I talked to myself about people liking things in reality. So if I was rollerblading or something and people are like, woo, they're kind of liking it in reality. So then I also realized that saying the word like more, like is a good word. You don't want to say it like the teenagers do, but saying like could be seen as similar to yes and, which is the improv theory. So improv theory could be yes and, saying yes to what the last person said and building upon it. And manic consciousness or manic theory in a way could be saying like to everything. This is like that. This is beautiful like this. So trying to say some of the words that perceiving something beautiful speaks through us. And then if we can go on about a rose for 2 minutes, we can say, well, that's the same as having your birthday, or something. It feels like having a great birthday, or I don't know, I'm just making that up. But I think that's part of what has been helping me realizing it today. It's summarized in a way by the word like. And also not only that, but I kind of like what I'm saying through the universe. And so it's another way to have likes in reality. So I was thinking of people saying woohoo to what you're doing, but it's also likes as in creating metaphors. If we could create metaphors in daily life, saying this is like that, extrapolating, which is building, as opposed to being like this is that. You are this, you are that. And those things aren't absolutely true. When we say something is something, then we're saying no to so much. If I say something is a certain thing, like, that's not a like that I was talking about, but that chair is bad. Now I'm saying no to all the other qualities that the chair could have. And so that's one point. And a lot of ways we communicate in life, we're saying no. We're in conflict. We are saying if we like or dislike something, which isn't the same as a like of metaphor, because like or dislike of something is very particular. So if you say you like this, you're summarizing it, you're labeling it with your own projection. So, and it's not creative, it's destructive. So whatever you like, you're saying you dislike all the other part of it, possibly. And when we think about it, conflict could be seen as no but, or as opposed to yes and in improv. So if we're not speaking in conflict, another way to speak is metaphorically, and it's creative and it's fun. And when I first went into that manic metaphoric consciousness, it lasted 2 months, and that was a bit much. But I feel that by making metaphors daily, or making extrapolations, it doesn't even have to be a metaphor in terms of poetic, but it could be an extrapolation in terms of seeing how something is similar. And the other point of that makes that important is that it's not only, usually we see in differences. We look at people to see how they're different from us in order to figure out how to defend ourselves from them. So, they're a different religion, they're a different skin color, or whatever. But when we're thinking in terms of like, we're thinking in terms of similarities. And the more we think in terms of similarities, that's a way to be more cooperative and united and things like that. But people can take that too far and say, well, everyone in my religion is similar to me, but we don't even know that. So hopefully I get the gist of what I'm saying. I don't know if anyone else does, but I realize I'm making metaphors. Extrapolations are another way to make metaphors. One could say, oh, somebody's mentally ill, or somebody who has been diagnosed can say, well, it's kind of like this and it's kind of like that. It's hard to say exactly how it's like because you can only know for sure if you experience it yourself. So since people aren't approaching us curiously and saying, well, what is it like? They're saying, what are your symptoms? So I can objectify you. And metaphors are subjective, and symptoms are supposedly objective. So sensing with our poetic sense and our sense of beauty daily. What I'm realizing a bit is I've talked about this inner richness that has nothing to do with the self and self-consciousness and thinking about oneself all the time. When that programming and conditioning is gone, for even temporarily gone, we can have this sense of beauty, we can have this sense of richness, we can have this sense of poetry. And when we're sensing those things in the moment, different words and different feelings and different inner subjectivity come into being. So part of it is learning how to clear the senses. One way I think I cleared my senses before I went into that state the first time I was on 100% raw food diet for a long time, months, and it probably made my senses too clear and made me too much like nature and too high vibe, and everything seemed beautiful. And I think part of that, what I'm seeing now, is when one is sensing so much beauty everywhere, but there is the ugly there, but we're just not seeing it because our salience has been turned to everything that's beautiful, we can forget about the ugliness, and that's nice temporarily, but the ugliness could eventually recapture us. And seeing beauty gives rise to poetic words and metaphors. So if we can do that daily, then that would increase those circuits in our brain, and when the energy comes in, we could see the beauty and sense the poetry of it and the words of it. But partly because we've already made so many metaphors, it's not as important to make so many when that energy comes in. And I have a sense that I've talked about most of this already, but that's okay. Again, it's about making metaphors and talking to oneself, and I want to stop talking about this and be more of an interesting character at some point. And this chair is sticky. And to go with that a little bit is, I think, asking questions or being in a state of, being in a state of looking for metaphors or looking at beauty and asking questions. Also, it primes the salience network in the brain to find the answer. The answer could be right in front of us. But when we ask a question, I think that allows us to find it in the space. It primes our salience network. And in a way, the answer is somewhere in the space. It's somewhere. And asking the question sort of brings it out of the space. Like if I say, where's my keys? Then I start looking, and then maybe I see them out of the corner of my eye. So it's like that, but more so. But when I wrote that down, I realized that it's possible when one is in manic, magic, map consciousness, that the brain is in a state of questioning, which means it's in the state of the unknown. And I feel like it's possible in that state, the brain has the power to materialize things faster. It's more powerful. So I was looking up the word omnipresent for some reason, and it means present everywhere at the same time. So then if you think about a hologram is an interference pattern, and it's present everywhere at the same time. So if you think about a holographic image or a holographic plate it can actually have many images recorded on it, and just depends where you shine the laser, what image will come up. So by asking questions or being in that state of questioning, in the state of the unknown, we're getting the universe to shine the laser. Whereas when we're in the state of the known or thinking, I want this, I want that, this person's this person's that, we're shining the laser. And that's a lot less efficient. So, if you think of reality as like this holographic plate, depending on the state of consciousness, we can pull things out of the hologram, which is omnipresent, a lot easier. We can call it forth with our words, or with no words. Words create a path, and if we stay without a path, then the universe might show us the path, and that's synchronicity, right? So if I'm open and looking around, and then all of a sudden I see something that is synchronicity for me, then I follow that. I'm not going to see that. So synchronicity is a state of consciousness, and I'm not going to see that if I'm so busy thinking about myself, which isn't there. So you're looking at something that isn't there. There's like a barrier to the clear interference pattern of the universe. One's interfering with the interference pattern. So in a way, what is really important, I think, is the capacity to perceive without thought. And that's most fundamental, because if we're not seeing clearly, then we can't look for signs or clues. We can't follow them. If we've created our own path, we can't follow the clues that the universe has given us. And so I realized that sort of gives way for the idea of being motivated. So one is motivated when one gets excited and is projecting something. But when we can see, if you can see, you don't need motivation. You don't need motivation to see. You just open your eyes. That doesn't need motivation. Kind of can't keep them closed all the time. We sleep and then we wake up, and open eyes is all that is required. This is my dinner. These are my supplements. So I just had an insight with my broccoli meal here. I was looking in the camera and I'm like, what is that? And I was looking and I was like, what's back there? It looks kind of like a bird. What is that? And then I realized, because I went like this, I realized that it was actually here. It's broccoli. It's right here. So I was thinking that it's possible that we really don't know how far things away or how close they are. We don't have perspective like we think we do. And when we create a path in our own mind of how to do something, then it might be right here. The universe might be like, well, it's right there. You don't need to create this path to get over there. Don't know if that's true, but I like the thought of it. This is korma sauce, and it's quite good. something I realized today. I wanted to talk about co-creation. The 7 S's of Co-Creation by Barbara Marx Hubbard. So I didn't make this up. She did. And it's probably in her book Conscious Evolution, which I bought, but I haven't read it yet. And she has these 7 S's, and I wanted to share them, but then I realized that a lot of these S's are what are happening when we're in so-called mania. So if a lot of these 7 S's are happening in mania, then are we not in a state of co-creation? So mania could then be called co-creation because of the 7 S's that are there. Or maybe there's an S that we're missing out on. Or maybe there's an S that's missing from these 7 S's that would help us get this in order. And so let's see here. So that's a different way of looking at it. Before I was like, well, these are the 7 S's, we need to get to it, according to her. But then I realized, hey, a lot of these are happening in that state. And that's kind of the point that I make with myself, is that we already went there. And then the there that we went to is what is sold to people that are of consensus consciousness. And then meanwhile, we get pathologized on the return, because the return from a co-creative state to a consensus state is really challenging. It's shifting modes. It's like going between worlds. So it says, Barbara Marx Hubbard and her teams of evolutionaries have developed a whole systems approach to co-creation, which describes the socio-personal and universal dimensions of co-creation, as well as a range of tools that enable people to practically engage with these principles. Some of Barbara's headline initiatives and memes include the Wheel of Co-Creation, Social Synergy Conventions, Syncons. Oh, I should look that up. And also Conscious Evolution. So I got this document from the New Map people, NOOMAP. They seem pretty cool in what they're trying to do, even though I don't know exactly what they're trying to do, but they shared the 7 S's. So I'm going to quote Barbara Marx Hubbard here to give us Mannix a little bit of a taste of this. So the first one is syntony, attunement with the patterns of creation experienced as one's own inner motivation and intuition. So we definitely get in touch with inner motivation and intuition. Synergy, coming together of separate parts to form a new whole, different from, greater than, and unpredictable from the sum of its parts. So I think the synergy is one that we need to work on. We need to work on coming together. Work on coming together, because the thing is that a lot of us, we go into this state and we end up in a world all by ourselves. And I feel like one of the reasons why we hit the game over point, the elastic band back into consensus reality, is because we go on our own. So we sort of create ripples of our own wonderfulness and enjoying ourselves. But there's so much energy there that we kind of need to learn how to share it. We need to learn how to synergize. And I think one of the ways we can do that is to talk with each other if we've gone into this type of state. Oftentimes we get trapped in a system that is objectifying us and systematizing us to believe we're lifelong mental patients. So then it distracts us from the co-creator pathway or co-creator game. I think one way to do it is to gamify bipolar. instead of make it into this recovery thing and blah, blah, blah. It's kind of boring. And then there's number 3 is synchronicity, the apparent acausal relationship among events, coincidences that could not be planned by human mind, but that appear to flow from a larger and more comprehensive design. Okay, we all know synchronicity. Synchronicity might be one that we need to turn down a little bit. Turn down the knob somehow on the synchronicity. And suprasex is number 4, the passion to express unique creativity stimulated by vocational arousal comparable to sexuality at the next level. Instead of joining genes to procreate, we join genius to co-create, to give birth to our greater self and our work in the world. Now, yeah, that's part of the point. I didn't know of the term suprasex, but I've been talking about releasing these memes. So it's like having a really big meme orgasm and seeing what kind of other people with other memes it co-creates with. So yeah, that's something that we need to start doing. We need to start having super sex with each other. Well, with ourselves. I'm having a lot of super sex with myself, but I need to start having super sex with others. So who wants to have super sex? Man. I mean, woman. So number 5 is syntropy, nature's tendency to form whole systems of greater complexity, consciousness, and freedom. Evolution's tendency to optimize. So we got to turn up the syntropy. I kind of envision this as like swarm intelligence. There's a book, Swarm Intelligence. They give a story of Motown and how a lot of African-American stars, like superstars, came out of Motown. And there were a lot more people around, like behind the scenes in Motown that, maybe there was 100 people and they generated like 3 stars with everybody pooling their assets. I was thinking that a possibility is that we pool however many of our assets and memes and ideas and resources and insights and genius, and maybe we're able to create 4 or 5 people that are really able to powerfully communicate this to the world or more. We could help train people to powerfully communicate from the subjective level and communicate, basically about co-creation or whatever we want to call it. And the thing is too, I've realized, is people have a right to remain objective or feeling and believing in objectivity. And I think we need to learn how to be objective and subjective. And maybe the reason, or maybe the way we can learn to be objective is recognizing when other people are being objective or want to remain objective. So those people wouldn't be the ones that want to come along with us for the ride of the ripples. They don't want to surf those waves. They don't want to. They want to play pool. They want to play ping pong. They want to hit a ball back and forth. They don't want to surf on waves. So, and that's okay. But how do we know who is down for that or not? So we know that our psychiatrist doesn't want to surf on our waves, right? They are, they're getting a lot of coinage from helping us, in quotes. But we wouldn't tell them about our plans to gamify, play the bipolar game a different way and find co-creators, etc. They would just think we're nuts. So that wouldn't be the person to share our waves with, our memes, our sound waves. So, continue to play the role of mentally ill and go see your psychiatrist. They don't have to know what you're doing with your waves. You can go there and be a particle. They can't tell the difference anyway. They did a study where people who didn't have a mental illness went into a psych ward and they got a diagnosis. So it's not very hard They can't tell the difference. They can't. They can't tell if you're a wave consciousness or an objective consciousness. And even if you are a wave consciousness, you can easily apply the objective lens because it's so old. We have that in our DNA and our abilities for many, 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 many years. So the other one, number 6, is spontaneity. The experience of unpremeditated action and thought that flows naturally without thinking or planning. Action that is on the mark, which facilitates and coordinates life. So spontaneity, yeah, we have a lot of that in mania. Maybe a little too much, and because there's too much, maybe that's when it gets off the mark. And I would say that spontaneity requires perception. It requires accurate perception. And accurate perception, I like how it says unpremeditated action here, because Krishnamurti says meditation is unpremeditated art. So not premeditating, not pre-planning. And it's an art. So this is sort of like an art of bipolar game. And 7 is self-creativity, the tendency in nature to organize itself. Autopoiesis, the inherent capacity in nature to self-organize without apparent outside manipulation, springing from the field of universal intelligence out of which everything is arising. So number 7 and number 5, syntropy. I think that if you look at the documentary on Osho or Rajneesh, I think there you see kind of an example of people coming together and pooling all their talents and building kind of a paradise for themselves in a relatively short period of time. And, they didn't have any, it was just a field of energy that they were able to respond to and tune into in order to co-create all that. And that's sort of, I think, from the universal intelligence. And it says that the term syntony was coined by Eric Jantzsch, Jantschch, in his book Design for Evolution. And it describes the ways of accessing conscious evolution. The relationship between cosmic design and the individual intensifies through some form of syntony or resonance. Syntony feels like guidance, intuition, or direct knowing. We don't have to figure out what to do. We know. We perform with spontaneous right action. The inner world of subjective experience and the outer world of objective reality blend and become one. So that could happen. That's kind of what happens in mania. Subjective and objective blend and become one. But it's hard, why doesn't that keep going forever? And yeah. Anyway, they're kind of saying what happens in the manic state. And usually they don't say, oh, this is what happens to people when they go into so-called mania. So we have to take this information and apply it to what we've learned. So do you recognize any of these traits or states or abilities within yourself and your own experience? So if we have a lot of certain aspects of these 7 S's of co-creation, but we're missing some. We have the spontaneity, we have the synchronicity, that's for sure. We have the syntony, I would say, but we're missing the synergy, we're missing the supersex. We try to have supersex with psychiatry, and that when we do that, we get objectified and they're called symptoms. So psychiatry is just we don't want to have idea sex with you. So we're going to overpower you with our ideas, and we're this whole medical profession, so we win. But they don't win. And we need some more syntropy, and we have the self creativity, that's for sure. So there are certain aspects that we need more of.